What's up, folks? Welcome back to LettermenRow.com. I am Jeremy Birmingham. This is Bermanology. This week, we are going to take a little bit of a detour, go away from the recruit side of the business and hop over the fence to the coaching side of things and get a chance to speak with Ohio State defensive assistant Matt Barnes, who, after 2 seasons with the Buckeyes, still remains a little bit of a mystery when it comes to exactly who he is, what he does with Ohio State, what makes him valuable for Ryan Day. Honestly, I want to know a little bit more about him as a person because I've seen some very funny things from Matt Barnes on the internet over the last couple of years. And I think it's pretty wild that a guy with this much personality hasn't really yet become a star in the Ohio State media beat. So I'm excited to get an opportunity to welcome in Matt Barnes. Coach Matt Barnes, Ohio State. I don't know. What are you now? The secondary coach, no longer the assistant to the secondary coach. You're moving up. So, Matt, first and foremost, congratulations on the recent promotion, I guess, or reassignment. How has it felt for you just going through these last 2 years at Ohio State? You've sort of been in the background, but it's been 2 of the craziest years that I can ever remember around Ohio State football.
It has, yeah. It's been a tumultuous time for everybody here, particularly in the last calendar year. My experience at Ohio State is a dream come true, and maybe that's cliche, but if you knew where I started and kind of my background and how I came up in coaching and really even before I took my first coaching job, just, the things that I aspired to do and the people that I wanted to be affiliated with. So for me, background, foreground, all the way background, the rafters, the nosebleed seats, I'm just happy to be here and happy to be a part of this whole thing. I've learned so much here in the last 2 years, both football wise, on the field, off the field. I learned something every day from our staff, from our players. So although it's been a little bit of a wild ride, again, particularly the last year or so, it's been unbelievable. Just a phenomenal experience for myself and my family.
Your coaching career started back in 2011 with West Virginia Wesleyan, I think, and you were an offensive coordinator, correct?
So, yeah, it started at a Division III school before that in just outside of Philadelphia for a year, kind of bounced around, and then made my way to West Virginia Wesleyan as offense coordinator. Yes, sir.
What was the Matt Barnes offense?
We were air raid. I sort of inherited the offense, at least I was brought in to run the same offense that we had run the year before when I was a running backs coach. So we were an air raid. We played the best defense in the country, and they were really good at stopping the run. I think we threw the ball 68 times in that game, and that was not 68 was a lot for us, but it wasn't abnormal for us to throw the ball significantly more than we ran it. And it was really just a product of we had a really good quarterback, some talented wide receivers, and a young offensive line. So a lot of quick game, a lot of screens, played really, really fast, kept it simple, and got the ball to our playmakers. It was really fun. I felt like I was playing Madden with real people, which was just incredible for me. And I think I was 25 years old at the time, so pretty cool.
How much has that shaped your philosophy as a defensive coach? I know obviously at Ohio State, you guys this past year, clearly you were incredible stopping the run and struggled on the back half a little bit with the passing game. And, I know your philosophy seems to be like you like the 3 deep and kind of hat on a hat, make sure all gaps are filled, all that stuff all the time. But how has that changed what you've done as you've seen the game evolve in the last 10 years?
Well, I think you make a great point, Jeremy, because the game certainly has evolved, and I think it will continue to do so. 10 years ago, the RPO, I don't know how many people really knew what an RPO was, and that wasn't really, something that was prevalent. In a year or two, somebody will have a new offensive fad, and defensive coaches will be trying to figure out ways to defend it. So, the things I learned on offense there, I think the biggest thing I learned was to keep it simple. That was why we were successful there at Wesleyan offensively, is because we kept it simple. We didn't try to do too much. We did what our players could execute. We found some cool little ways to make it look a little bit different for the opponent, but really it was the same thing for us. And, whether it's special teams or defense, that's kind of my approach. I think you want to allow your players to go play fast and make sure they know what they're doing, or they're not going to play fast. But yeah, I think that in having some perspective of having coached on the other side of the ball definitely helps. When you're going into game planning, kind of being able to look at some things from the other side of the ball and consider, okay, if we play this coverage, how do we attack it? What do we anticipate their answers being when we throw in this wrinkle? And then, okay, what's our answer going to be when we get that wrinkle that we're expecting?
One of the things that I've heard about you from talking to other coaches around the Ohio State program about you is that they consider you an excellent teacher. And I guess I wonder where that comes from. Is that a result of working with guys you've worked with? Is it just a natural inclination? I mean, is it DJ Durkin? Is it, who's the influence for you as a coach?
Certainly DJ had a huge role in that. I think DJ is a phenomenal teacher and a great football coach. I think it's a couple things. I think it's one, as a young coach, I was extremely fortunate to be around some really, really talented football coaches, both from a knowledge standpoint and also just their ability to teach and communicate. So I took a little bit from everything. I think my best quality as a coach is that I listen, particularly as a young coach. I didn't think I had all the answers. I certainly didn't have it all figured out, and I knew that. So I just, I took copious notes. I tried to be a sponge. I watched everything I could watch. I read everything I could read. So I've kind of taken some things from different people, but specific to teaching style. Again, I was just very fortunate as a young coach to be around some really, really good teachers. And then in addition to that, man, I have, at this point, I own up to it. I'm the biggest football nerd you'll ever meet. I mean, I'm a raging football nerd. I can't get away from it. When I get home, I take a shower, I draw up X's and O's in my shower steam. And I got a laptop right next to my TV at home here. My wife watches TV, and I sit there and I watch film and things like that. So I can't get away from it. So I think when I teach, it's clear to tell that I'm very passionate about what I'm teaching. And I think, like anything else, I think enthusiasm breeds enthusiasm. And if I'm standing in the front of the room teaching, and I can't help but get really, involved or passionate about what it is that I'm talking about. And I think that hopefully that translates to some of our players and makes it for a little bit more fun or engaging learning environment for them.
I think one thing that I find interesting is that as coaches, you came to Ohio State from Maryland, but a lot of people hadn't really heard much about you. And I think there was this perception is at that time you were the 10th hire to the staff, that you were just sort of the late guy add-on, right? Coming from Maryland, you're a Maryland native. I'm sure it was hard for you to even make that decision, but you coached at Florida, you coached at Michigan, you've been in these big time programs. Was there something even different about Ohio State than you expected in the last 2 years? Like when you walked in the door and you're like, oh crap, this is actually way different than I've been anywhere else?
The biggest difference to me, Jeremy, is the culture. And I've been around some really good ones, but this is an elite culture. This is a culture unlike anything I've ever been around. I remember really all of the coaches that as we first got there, when Coach Day was took over the helm and the new staff, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, came in. I mean, within just one or two workouts, we were kind of looking at each other like, whoa. And it was obviously there was a lot of talent. We had some really good looking players. But it was the work ethic. It was their approach to workouts. It was their attitude in the locker room, going before the workout started. I mean, they're early, 6 a.m. workout. I mean, they're coming in the building at 4:45, 5 o'clock to make sure that they're hydrated, to make sure that they've eaten. And this is not stuff that the coaching staff is driving. We're not holding their hands to do that. So I remember the quote being thrown around a lot is if you didn't, as a player, if you didn't work hard, you stuck out like a sore thumb. And some of the issues that we think are issues here are really minuscule compared to some of the things that I've seen elsewhere. So the culture for sure. I mean, I heard great things, but to see it firsthand, it was a game changer for me.
Primarily, Matt, what we talk about on these shows is normally recruiting. I normally have recruits on or signees or commits around the country. And I guess as a coach, how does that knowledge of that culture, how do you promote it or how do you sell it with kids, knowing that it's not being driven by you guys? You guys are sort of the guardians of it, I guess, the custodians of it, but it has to be player driven for it to be successful in a program long term. And how do you get kids to buy into that on the recruiting trail when it's not actually you guys doing it?
Sure, that's a great question. Yeah, absolutely. A great question, Jeremy. So to me, and I think, and I've been asked similar questions before, a little bit different context, but and I don't want to sound arrogant when I say this, but I think part of the thing about being at Ohio State is that you're Ohio State. We are an elite program. We are one of the top 3 programs in the country, in my opinion. So we have the advantage of recruiting the right kids that not only are great players, but are great people and fit our culture. So we kind of seek those people out. And that's why, early on in the recruiting process, we are a little bit more, I'll say we're more diligent, I think, than some other teams are about really doing our research and our homework and figuring out not just what's on tape, but what's really in this person's heart, what's in their in this young man's mind. What really makes them up and what do they want. And when we find the guys that we've identified as good enough player and the right fit for our culture, that's what they want to hear. We tell them that they'd be in the locker room with like-minded individuals, and then from there, I think in something that I thought was pretty unique about our this past recruiting class is how well they did recruiting each other. I think that's really the best way for them to see that, as they realize, oh, okay, wow, I'm coming in with people that, although I may be from wherever this part of the country and so's from all the way across the other side of the country, we're really like-minded here. We're really in this for the right things. Yeah, we like to have fun, and yeah, we joke around sometimes, but at the end of the day, we're really serious about football. We're really serious about academics. We want to make the right decisions off the field. And again, I think the culture kind of feeds into that, and I think that the kids that we bring in also feed the culture. And along the way, it's not like we are completely hands off, and we try to guide them and give the leaders, the guys that are sort of natural leaders, give them some additional leadership skills and things like that. But again, I think a lot of it is who we recruit, and then getting those like-minded individuals together.
When I talked with Ryan Day around signing day in December, he said that he actually thought in a weird way that the COVID year and the ability to do Zoom calls and stuff like this actually might have been a benefit for you guys, because you are, as you said, diligent in the recruiting process. Recruits might call it slow or, holding out on them, but whatever you want to call it, it gives you guys an opportunity to figure out who might just be offer chasing and who might actually be interested in building relationships. Is there a story or a guy in this last cycle in the 21 class, you guys signed 6 defensive backs, that you felt like a certain connection with, maybe that was different, that, hey, this formed because of this ability and this type of communication? I mean, a guy like Denzel Burke, who never visited Ohio State in his life until he arrived on campus 3 weeks ago, is a crazy story. But how does that all come together in this era?
Yeah, again, Jeremy, great question. It's hard to single anyone out. I guess on the spot, the one that we had a lot of correspondence, and again, I think it's because we are like-minded. We're both really football junkies or football nerds. But Andre Turrentine is one that sticks out. He just loves football. He loves to learn. We actually, just before this Zoom visit at 5:00 this evening, we did another little football session where, a lot of it is just him talking. I mean, he's kind of teaching me things and, what he's done in the past and different coverages and how he's played them and things like that. And I really kind of let him, run with that stuff. But along the way, there were many, many of those types of conversations. Got to know his folks really well. And again, I just, get from a self-proclaimed football nerd. I think Andre's got a little bit of that in him as well. So that Zoom platform is really conducive to those types of conversations. So that was kind of one that sticks out along the way that was kind of different, via COVID.
Do you? I'm going to ask you to do something that's probably uncomfortable, because I know coaches aren't always the guy that pump themselves up. But when Jeff Hafley left at the end of the 2019 season, and then Kerry comes in and comes back and fills his spot, Kerry doesn't know any of these kids that are being recruited, and you sort of are put on the spot as the I don't want to say the conduit or the maintainer of things. Do you feel like that class comes together if you're not there doing that? Because I personally, Matt, I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't think you get enough credit for what happened last cycle, and I want to make sure that you do. So if you don't want to say it, just wink and nod or whatever. But I want to make sure that people know that a lot of these kids, Jansen Dunns of the world, these kids were in this class because they had got to spend time getting to know you when they couldn't really get to know Kerry Coombs.
Sure. Well, Jeremy, I appreciate you saying that. As far as recruiting goes, I look at myself as an ambassador for our program. So I don't know whether it was myself or another ambassador of our program. I certainly, the important thing was that there was a continuation of the recruiting, and there was a relationship, and continuing to build those relationships, I think, was critical. So at that particular time, it was I was in the right spot to be able to kind of bridge that gap with some of those players. And Kerry's track record as a recruiter, I mean, it speaks for himself. So, whether it was myself or another coach, at the end of the day, it was just a means to continue to be an access into our program. And our program and our kids are really what I think are selling here. But I appreciate you acknowledging that.
How different is Kerry to Jeff as someone to work with? Because from the very brief time that I got to know Jeff, it sort of seemed like to me he was like just Kerry minus 20 years or however many years difference between the two of them. So, I mean, do you see a lot of similarities between those two, or are there areas where you're like, okay, that's a difference because Kerry might be a little more old school, or, where do you see those guys being compare and contrast?
Yeah, I think there are, like anything else, there's some similarities and some differences. I think style-wise, I think Jeff was a little bit more laid back. Kerry's a little bit more, I don't want to say aggressive, but Kerry's super
energetic.
Energetic. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, he's racing the kids around the field, and I can't keep up with him. I mean, but he's impressive, man. He's got a lot of energy, and Jeff had some of that in him as well, but Jeff was a little bit more laid back, a little bit more conversational in the meeting rooms and things like that. But both of them just a wealth of knowledge in secondary play, outstanding recruiters, unbelievable human beings. So in all those areas, a lot of similarities.
Do you ever mention the Draddy Trophy when you're talking to recruits? I mean, do you ever talk about the Draddy? Do kids not know enough about the Draddy? That's really what I'm curious about.
Jeremy, that's unbelievable. I'm going to turn the volume up. You can say that again just to make sure my wife heard you say Draddy Trophy. I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that. I forgot all about the Draddy Trophy. That's good stuff, man. I think you're right. We got to get some T-shirts or some hats made for that thing, man. We got to get that thing out in the limelight a little bit. No, I'm with you.
It's unbelievable. We celebrate fat guy touchdowns, and we're still sleeping on the Draddy.
Sleeping on the Draddy, man. It's unbelievable.
Does anybody mention Little Pump to you anymore? Because this is the one thing, and this is for me, Matt, and I told you before we started recording, like the video of you back in the summer of 2019, where you were trying to name rappers, and it was Little Pump, and you're like, don't ever say Little Pump to me again. Was one of those moments where I was like, man, this guy needs to be in the public spotlight because this is funny stuff. But look, I could talk all night because I'm a football nerd too, but I know that you probably need a break. So I appreciate you taking time, Matt. It's been great to get to talk to you a little bit and hopefully give people a little bit of sense of who you are. And maybe we'll get to see more of you if we ever get a chance to, go back to covering the team in person. So thanks for taking time.
Well, we look forward to the day that we can get you back in the Woody Hayes, and it'd be a heck of a deal, man. But again, appreciate everything that you guys do. And I appreciate you having me on and giving me the opportunity to rap a little bit with Buckeye Nation. So appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Anytime. That is Matt Barnes. I'm Jeremy Birmingham. This has been Bermanology on Lettermen Row. Thanks for watching, everyone. Catch you later.